Hello, my name is Mrs. Keitel. I am the art teacher at Wickham as well as Alexander here in the Iowa City Community School District. And today we have just watched the story of The Dot by Peter H. Reynolds. It tells us all about Vashti and how she was able to take just a mark and see where it takes her, and how her teacher encourages her to just start with that mark and make some artwork from it. So what we're going to be doing is planning out 8 different dots that we're going to then pull from and pick from next week to create some grid dot paintings. And this should be awesome because what we'll be able to do is kind of plan out our paper, know what dots we're going to use from today, and then this will become a really awesome painting. Now we have to start with 8. And I've made these little boxes. Now, if we make a grid, then we know that next week a grid is going to divide our paper up into boxes. But if you would prefer to plan out without the box, that is fine too. But everybody must create at least 8 separate designs to go into next class. Now, one thing we've also kind of talked a little bit about today is positive and negative space. Now, positive and negative space, let's see, how do we want to think about this? It's kind of thinking about how we fill things in. So when it's a positive space that's filled in, usually whatever you're creating is filled in and the area around it is left blank. Where if it's the negative space that is being consumed or used, then it's going to be around the shape or item that you drew that will be filled in. So when we look at these positive or negative squares here, we're going to look at these like they're die that we might throw during a game. You would think that the positive space is filling in what we're making. So if you're doing dots that are taking up positive space, they're going to be filled in. Whereas if you are doing dots that are having the negative space, then it's going to color in or fill in everything around it. So if we have a Sharpie drawing here, if this were dice or a die or a piece, one single dice, then the whole around the circles would be filled in. So again, positive space is filling in what we are drawing all the way. If it were a dot, we're using our positive space for the inside. And same for this dot here. If we're using the negative space, it's all the space around it. So it's good to just get some practice using this positive and negative space because it's actually something that we use all the time but don't really think about. We just normally color in both the positive and the negative when we have big backgrounds. So go with whatever you're feeling for your designs today, just wanting to think about positive space is filling in the inside, where negative is normally filling the outside. So I'm going to come back over to my 8 designs here, and these can really be just about anything. Anything that starts with a dot and where we see where it takes us. So if I'm going to start with just a simple circle, like Vashti, who filled hers in, her teacher said it was like a polar bear in a snowstorm. But for mine, I look at this and I immediately think of that circle as kind of like a sun. So maybe then I could use other shapes that I know to complement my dot. So maybe one design would be something like a sun, or something where we use other shapes to help turn it into something. Maybe I could do dots that repeat. You can call this a radial design. It also kind of looks like a bullseye if you've played darts or yard games like that. We could also do dots that turn into something else. So maybe I have one dot and another, and I could turn this dot into a yummy donut. Now when you're practicing these today, you're going to be using pencil. I'm using Sharpie so you can see them nice and clearly. But remember, you are going to come up with 8 different dot ideas. Maybe I could do a whole series of dots. Some bigger, some smaller. Maybe some dots are so big they're coming off of my little design if I chose to make myself little squares, polka dots. We could do dots that kind of transform into other things. So maybe I have a big dot that actually becomes a tree. So I could draw the trunk coming out with other little dots coming out of it or inside of it. It's kind of like a little popcorn tree almost. Once I started this tree, it made me think of another thing I can use to start with a dot, and that's a flower. My petals almost look like dots too. Maybe one of my favorite characters starts with a circle shape or a dot. So you could make a little person maybe. As you continue on with these today, you're going to see that before you know it, dots are just about everywhere for kind of a starting base for us. So whatever you decide to make today, just kind of think about making that mark and see where it takes you. For every single dot that you use, know that you're going to be coloring these in, and you're going to be picking from your designs what your painting's going to be next week. For my last dot, I think I'm going to have some overlapping dots. It's going to kind of morph out and just be one big shape. When you get done with these today, feel free to color them in with crayons or markers, thinking about what paint colors you might want to use. Take your time. Do your best drawings today, and if there is extra time, feel free to quietly share with your neighbors some of your creative ideas. Have fun creating your dot designs and plans today. Be ready to make your grids filled with dots next week.